People sometimes casually toss around the term OCD when they become trivially obsessed with something. But OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder, is a real problem for tens of thousands of people of all ages. There's an awareness event coming up next week. Dr. Robert Falk and John Vada, who is a sufferer in recovery, are here with us today to talk about this disorder. Good morning, gentlemen. Good to see you.
Good morning, Cheryl.
OCD is a term we hear, like I said, tossed about a lot, but this is a real disorder that people can suffer terribly with. Let's talk about exactly what OCD is, Doctor.
And Cheryl, thanks for having us. We
You're
appreciate
welcome.
that. Yeah, obsessive compulsive disorder is a disorder that can be very debilitating. And so you're right, I think it does tend to be trivialized. People say, oh, I'm so OCD when they're neat or when they like to have things a certain way. What we're talking about is a disorder that pretty much everyone agrees is a neurobiological disorder at its core, that it's a brain-based disorder, but it also involves learning as part of its process. So diagnostically, what we look for as a clinician is, does the individual experience obsessions? And obsessions are repeated, intrusive, and disturbing thoughts, images, or feelings. So these are thoughts that the person doesn't want to have. They can't ignore them because they're repetitive, and they cause great distress.
Is this something that's easy to diagnose?
It's not easy to diagnose. In fact, that's kind of how I got interested in it. I kind of missed the diagnosis back in the 1980s, and that kind of started my interest in kind of specializing in OCD. Research tells us people take about 7 years and go from 3 to 4 physicians before accurate diagnosis. So I think if you are concerned that you may have OCD or a family member may have OCD, it's important to see a clinician who has some experience with that, a mental health professional.
Right.
The other part of the diagnosis is most people who have OCD don't just have the obsessions, they then have compulsions, which are behaviors that the person engages in to try and reduce the distress that's associated with those obsessions, okay? And I think that's sometimes misunderstood too, because we think about compulsions as being a behavior that the person does that you can see. Probably most commonly we think about somebody who has some type of obsessions where there's a fear of contamination of some kind, perhaps with a disease.
You hear the compulsive hand washing.
Exactly.
We see that a lot. I want to bring John into the conversation. How did having OCD impact your personal life, John?
Oh, tremendously. It limited my life to the point where I really wasn't able to be myself or really to do the things that I wanted to do. I have been the contamination aspect of OCD is one that has affected me, and so I have been avoiding a lot of things and cleaning up a lot of things so it takes away a lot of my time, and also it limits where I go and what I do. That is, what was happening to me, but when it first started happening to me, it started happening so gradually that I didn't realize it was taking over my life. And it wasn't until a really good, trusted friend of mine brought it to my attention that I really wasn't myself. And it wasn't until it was brought to my attention by a good friend that I really decided that I needed to seek help.
And I guess that's the thing, is people should not be afraid of seeking help.
Right. I think people oftentimes feel isolated, like they're the only one who is experiencing these kinds of thoughts and feeling compelled to take these kinds of actions. And so that's part of our effort, and John was really instrumental in being the spark plug to have a Richmond OCD awareness activity. And this is part of National OCD Awareness Week, which is going to come up next week.
Okay, and that's when you have a meeting coming up. Tell us about that.
We're going to have a meeting that kind of grew again out of John's impetus. He was kind of bugging me last year to try and do something, and he actually got a good article in the Richmond Times-Dispatch for OCD Awareness Week last year. And this year we got started a little sooner. We have kind of an ad hoc group of area professionals who have expertise in diagnosing and treating OCD. So on Thursday night, October
The 12th.
12th, from 6 to 8 p.m., we're going to meet at the Larrick Center on the medical campus of VCU. Free meeting, open to the public. We'll have a public lecture on the issues you're discussing right now. How do I know if I have OCD or my loved one has it? How can it appear? Because it can take many different forms besides the contamination. Always involves doubt of some kinds. We're going to talk about pediatric OCD because it can begin in childhood, and often does begin in childhood. We're going to talk about treatment, different types of effective treatment, because there is effective treatment available. So for people who are suffering in silence, this is an opportunity to get together with people who have experienced the disorder, people have experienced treating it, and give some hope to folks.
John, we'll give you the last word. Why should people come to this meeting?
To know that you can make a difference in your life. You can live your life more fully by taking advantage of the treatments that are available, primarily medication and cognitive behavioral therapy. It's made a tremendous difference in my life to have this treatment. I can honestly say that I am living my life more fully than I've ever lived it before right now. So for me, it's understanding that there is help available, that it is effective, and it can change your life.
I'm happy to hear that for you. Thank you, John Vada and Dr. Robert Falk. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you. Appreciate
And
it.
again, you're invited to attend OCD Connect on Thursday, October 12th at 6 p.m. This free meeting will be at the Larrick Student Center on the MCV Medical Campus. We'll put a link to much more information on WTVR.com/VTM if you'd like to find out more.